Pierce Vincenty is going to be presenting us his senior exhibition. He'll have 15 to 20 minutes to present, and then we'll open questions to the panel. And once the panel has asked all our questions, then we'll open it up for the audience to ask any questions. And then at that point, we'll ask everybody to leave except for the panel, in which we will then deliberate whether or not Pierce has met the standards, and then we'll call him back in for some feedback. So,
okay, cool.
Please give your full attention to Pierce, and without further ado.
All right, I'm Pierce Vincenty. My senior X is 3D modeling and animation. So, beginning process. I didn't really, as all seniors, I had a lot of ideas, but I really didn't have a lot of mentors. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I had many projects in mind, such as building quadcopters or doing robotics. That is because that is something that interests me, but it eventually came down to cost. Components are expensive. I do not have a lot of money, and since they changed the grant system, the amount of money I can get is severely limited. $500 worth of parts out of pocket is a huge cut of my budget for my year. So I was like, well, what can I do that is in a similar vein, but is cheap and more on the lines of free? So this is how I got to choosing 3D modeling and animation. The project size and scope. When I came into this project, I really didn't know how big or how much of an involved process it was. I was like, oh yeah, you just build the model, and you rig it and you skin it and it's good, and it works. And it's like, what? It'll take me a month maybe. How wrong I was. I also had very, very low, my expectations for how hard it was going to be were very low, because I thought I knew more than I did. I'd worked in other programs before that were kind of similar, and I was like, oh, I kind of know how to use these, kind of. Maybe the knowledge will be super applicable, which was a kind of a false statement. Although I did, with the help of Jeff Saman, find my mentor. So Spencer Knapp, he works out in LA. He is a crowd animator for DreamWorks. Has worked extensively on Kung Fu Panda 2, How to Train Your Dragon 2, The Croods, a bunch of big blockbuster movies. He also, and I was able to get in contact with him through Jeff. He also has this great thing. He has worked a lot in Maya, which is one of Autodesk's modeling and animation suites, which for students is free. And I was like, oh, project free. That's an excellent combination of things. So I was able to get my student licensing and get started on the project. So prior knowledge. I had used Source Filmmaker for a little bit. It's Valve's free animation program within the Source engine, which was helpful. I did learn a lot about working in 3D space, just really basic stuff. I wasn't very good at it because I just kind of played around with it for a couple days. But it was definitely helpful in this process. Also, Blender. It sucks. It's the equivalent of 3D modeling. If you're doing 3D modeling, Blender is just the equivalent of punching yourself in the face. It's really, really hard to use, and really it's terrible. But I kind of learned how to use it a little bit just to get it. I could build basic, really, really crude, basic polygon models, and get them to, they worked for what I wanted them to do, which was just kind of fooling around. And also, this project was I started it out, but when I started to refine it, I discovered it is a multi-step process. There are 4 essential steps to creating and animating 3D models. You have to have you have to have concept art and then make your model. You have to rig your model so that it can be animated, rig it, and then skin it, which is attaching the model to the skeleton rig. You have to you can then texture it, put on different UV textures. So if you want things to light up, you want different skin textures that aren't just the default gray. You need to do that, and then you need to animate it. So I broke it down to these steps because I knew that I could I could like really show progress throughout these steps and be able to complete them in a in timely fashion. There were also a lot of challenges in this. I didn't really know what I was doing. I kind of got thrown in. I was kind of thrown into this very quickly. Maya is a very unforgiving program when it comes to beginners. It is not super newbie friendly. You have a lot of it's a professional level program, so it comes with having a lot of drop down menus and having a lot of tools you don't know what they do. Also, this process, these four essential steps, are usually done by teams of people that know what they're doing. I am one person that doesn't know what I'm doing. So there was definitely a large, I had a large challenge to that because it was it's a lot of work. It's a lot of doing one step, going on to the next step, finding out what you did in the last step didn't work, going back to that step, and then redoing it several times, called pipeline. It is very hard to pipeline as one person because that is not very good at it. So my essential question essentially came down to how does tackling a large project such as 3D modeling just by myself help me set realistic goals, because this project did need realistic goals to make it happen. I couldn't have just gone into it and just been like, I'll just get it done at some point in time, because it would have never gotten done. So I had to set forth plans to make sure I got steps done on time, and I was, relatively successful, I hope. There's a lot of problems with that, but it eventually worked out in the end. First step that I started on was concept art. So this is some of the concept art. It's hard to see. I forgot to bring in the actual art, which is unfortunate. But I did probably about 12 or 13 different sketches of different model designs that I wanted. I was originally building this thing right here. That was like the first drawing I did. Just kind of like fleshed out what I kind of wanted it to look like. I was building a biped, kind of this robotic biped model. It did get refined quite a bit. These are like some secondary designs on like legs and how legs would work. And then you can't really see it over there, but that is a secondary head design and some angling heads. One of the issues with this was, I'm not an artist. I have never taken a drawing class in my life and can't draw human figures at all. So I needed to make semi-professional, if not professional level art. This was a huge challenge. So thankfully, Miss Collins had books that I used heavily to get these models to look the way I wanted them to look. Because if I basically hadn't had these model drawing books, these would have been crude stick figures. Trying to convey that to somebody living across the country is hard. Like what I want the model to look like. There's a lot of back and forth with Spencer about, what do you think about this? Will this work? Will this not work? And it also took me a very long time. It took me actually too long of a time, which was something that was issue in the first project, because I started at the beginning of the year, and I was like, I have almost an entire year to do this project. It'll be fine. Little did I know, time goes by very, very fast. So once I finished this, I went on to the modeling step. So this is what our modeling workspace looks like in Maya. I'll show it to you guys a little late at the end of the presentation, but to give you a brief overview, so this is your work, your 3D work area. You have all your you have all your tools over here, and then all your different and a bunch of other tools over there. Then just like inspectors, stuff like that. There's a lot of challenges to this project. Vision versus reality, taking what you have in your concept art and turning it into a 3D model. Working in the third dimension is very hard. You can't think. It's really hard to turn, like you're looking at your 2D art and saying, well, what's on the other side of it? Oh, what's underneath it? You can't just think of it as a flat object. And so there's a lot of playing around with how objects look, looking at hands and arms and stuff to get like, oh, how does this look in 3D space, to make it so you can actually model it well in 3D space. So resources, I used Autodesk. Autodesk has an excellent series of tutorials just to get yourself familiarized with the program, just learning how to use the basic tool set and how to go through and work in 3D space, because there's a lot of shortcuts and key commands that you do need to know to make it so your process doesn't take exceedingly long amount of time. I also use digital tutors. They have an excellent web series of basic modeling and basic modeling conventions, which I used very heavily just to get a good idea of the correct way to model, because there are good and bad ways to model, kind of like anything. And so that was really important to make sure like I'm doing it correct, because I was sending the stuff to Spencer, and I was like, I can't give him really terrible models, because he's a professional. I kind of wanted to keep what I was doing on a semi-professional basis. Rigging and skinning. This is my next step. So you can see I have the model here and all those little purple lines, which I'll show you later. Also, those are the rig. So you build a rig for all your jointing. And then you put it inside the geometry of the model. There's also a lot of challenges to this. It's tedious. I spent 6 hours reorganizing how the joints work. So jointing works in Maya. So you have essentially these things called parent joints. So if you have a joint here, that's a joint, and we call it the parent joint. And so if you have a bunch of joints in this joint chain, so you have here's another joint, here's another joint. So these are your children joints. Essentially, if you click on this joint here, it'll select all the joints in the joint, all the children joints in that joint chain. And so it's a hierarchy system. So it's like, so when you're like, if you have a finger, right? You don't want, if you're modeling and you want your finger to rotate here. You don't want just this piece to rotate and this piece not to, because that'll break your model, and it'll break the geometry of the model, because your model doesn't like to bend that much. So you have to make sure, like, oh, I click on this joint and then I move this joint down, and then I can move on to the other joints. And so it's setting up joint chains and joint hierarchies. It just takes a long time. It's really tedious. You have to make sure you name everything and have correct naming conventions, because when looking at it, you don't know, if you're looking at your list of joints, joint 27 doesn't mean anything. You want to have it named something useful so that you can actually find it in the model. For this resource, I used Control-Alt-Delete tutorials. They have a YouTube tutorial series. Very, very excellent. I was very glad I found this. It took me through the entire process of getting this model rigged and skinned and put together. Without that, I would have had no clue, because there's a lot of really terrible tutorials on YouTube that are just really long and don't teach you anything. But this, I was very fortunate to have that as a resource. Animation process, ongoing. There's a lot of problems with my rig. The skinning of my rig, it's like after that I skinned the rig, which you'll get to see. But the issue was, it's not skinned well. There are a lot of things that I don't like that are broken about the skin that I do need to fix. And so I'm actually talking with Spencer right now to see and trying to figure out, I need to figure out a different way of how I rig my model. This is again pipeline. Made the rig. Rig doesn't work with the skinning, so I have to go back to the rig and redo the rig. But it is right now, the animation has not been done yet, which is unfortunate, because I'd have liked to have it finished, but time constraints got in the way, unfortunately. I need to rework the rig. So what? This is a super useful skill. 3D modeling is becoming hugely prominent, especially with 3D printers, a lot of stuff like that. Maya, knowing how to just work in 3D space is a huge step up especially in digital art. Jobs and applications. This is also a pretty good area if you want to go work somewhere. If you have a good experience in 3D modeling, you can work anywhere from construction, for doing like CAD modeling, CAD designing, to working at DreamWorks, as Spencer does, doing animation or model build or modeling. Also, it's applicable to me. I'm going into the major I'm going into is a theater arts major, but this is very applicable. To be able to create my own 3D animations is super helpful, because I don't need to either take classes on how to do it, or I have a head start in those classes. I have the basic know-how, which is super helpful. It also is just a huge learning process. Almost all of this stuff is new to me. I didn't know how to do any of it. So it was a lot of sitting on my own, working with and trying to work with this stuff. Spencer did an excellent job of pointing me in the right direction, but it is very hard to teach any of this in like a one-on-one conversation. You have to basically go and just work with the program a lot and get familiar with the program. So that was a lot of this process, was just like, how does this work? If I use this tool, how does this affect this in the model? And they're like, that's like the end application. So if I have a 3D model like this arm that I will show you, if I wanted to, could turn it into an OBJ file, which works with 3D printers, and then print out a physical copy of what I built, which is something I couldn't do 5 years ago, which is excellent. And that adds definitely a physicality to like actual 3D modeling, because you can turn your digital file into an actual physical format, which is excellent. And I'm very hopeful that I can start working with that. Future of this project, I will be making more models in digital art. That is a given. I very much enjoyed doing this. It was a lot of fun, and I still have so much to learn. There was definitely a lot of challenges when it came to modeling, about like how things work and getting things to look the way I want them to. So I still have a lot of things to work with in this respect. Again, college, good skill to have in college. I'll be able to, and yeah, so the college, and so conclusion, time management, back to kind of my essential question. The goals I set definitely changed throughout the process. They were not set in stone, just because I had a lot of time conflicts and time constraints, and I also there were things that I didn't plan out that I should have planned out, like how long it takes for modeling, or how long it takes for this, and these different steps. But I did learn, if I do a project like this again in the future, I do now have a basis to base like my time on, which is very helpful. It also is a huge learning curve. If I do this process again, I don't have to learn all the basics again, so I can actually accelerate the process forward, which is helpful. And this comes down to like really basically, I underestimated my time constraints on this project. Overall, I didn't get what I wanted to get done for like I don't have an animation done, and what I have done is only a small fraction of what I wanted to get done, but just due to not knowing how to do a lot of the steps, I wasn't able to advance that process as much as I would like. And so that's just something that I need to make sure I work with next time. Where is my works cited? I would like to, and here, I will now switch over to the model. Oop. So there are plenty of people I need to thank for this project, please. Nope, come on. Yes, okay. So this is the animation workspace within Maya. So you can see this arm, right? So I built all of this. So here, you can see, this is the ooh-ah moment. Click on this IK joint, and then ooh-ah, it moves. So as you can see, it is wonky. See, like this here, that shouldn't happen. That is a problem with the rig. That is a huge, the geometry is bending in weird ways. But basically so this is one of the learning things. Like, I need to learn how to fix that, because that obviously doesn't look good. And if you're doing an actual animation, you wouldn't want this weird clipping to happen in your model. But I did actually, and it was also like adding control surfaces. You don't need to add control surfaces to a rig. Oh, that's wireframe, there we go. So like this. So this is what I'm talking about with like joint hierarchy. See, this is your pointer finger, right? So when I move this end joint, it moves all the joints in the joint chain, and it's deforming the geometry a little bit. But like this, and so there's a lot of setting up this, because you don't, when you're working in animation, you really don't want to have to use the joints. You don't want to have to go to your rig all the time. So it's like a little separate thing. You want to just have control nodes, because you have like a lot of the geometry on a rig you don't want to animate, like spines and stuff. If you have a larger character, they're relatively useless. If like they're not useless, but like you don't want to have to like go into the geometry to pull it out. So there's also a lot of creating control surfaces. These are all control nodes. So when I click on this, it actually selects. You can see here, let's just drag this over a little bit. So this is connecting to this joint hierarchy. So this, if you want, like, you can look at this hierarchy kind of hellscape of just. You can see all of, like, this is, and then all of your index, and then all of your connectors. But yeah, so like you can take. You want one minute? Okay. Yeah. So like that, and this, like, this is my final product as of right now. It is still being defined. So yeah, so like that. So this is my end product, and it was not really my end product, but this is what I've gotten done. I hope you guys liked it. I have a couple people to thank. I would like to thank Spencer for just being my mentor, letting me just showing me tutorials, showing me how to do stuff. Jeff for getting me in contact with Spencer. Thank you. And definitely thank Miss Collins for like the books and some sage advice about time planning things out. So thank you. That was my Senior X presentation. I open it for questions, I guess, now.
Any panelists have any questions?
What was your original plan to get done?
Oh, so my original plan was to have a full biped model. Obviously, this did not happen. Yeah, I just got the arm done. I spent too much time. There was a lot of issues with like getting things to look right and being super kind of OCD about like, I want this to look this way. And so what happened was I just ran out of time and I had to move on because I knew I wouldn't get any of the rest of the project done. So it just ran into time constraints. But yeah, like I wish I had the concept art here. But yeah, it was the idea that what I had planned out in concept art was a full biped rig, which I still might do if I have time.
How long did it take you to adjust this arm fit?
This, oh God, 30, 40 hours of work.
Ooh.
Just to get the arm, to get to the way to look kind of what I wanted to look like. Redoing a lot of steps. I had to redo a lot of the fingers. I had to remodel. I had to learn how to model. And then creating all like joints and stuff. It is a laborious process. There's a reason why it is done in teams. But unfortunately, I am not a team of people. So yeah, it took an obscene amount of time. But it worked all right in the end. Bonnie?
And like for like a professional thing with like teams of people, how long would it take them to do something like this?
It depends. For something like this, they could get it done in probably a day. This model is not good by any standard of the imagination. But for a professional, it all depends on what you're doing. If you're there's different, if you're building like a model for animation for like a movie, it's definitely going to take a much longer time. It'll take months to get models to be in pipeline to get them done. Months, if not years in some cases, for like more complicated models that you need to create other systems for.
So what was your essential question again, and how did you answer it?
My essential question was, how does 3D doing a project such as 3D modeling by myself help me set realistic goals? And what this project really showed me was that you need it's about adjusting goals, and I sometimes had set goals down that I thought were realistic at the time, but that actually weren't. And really just like trying to get a good idea of exactly how I work and how I need, how I can improve this process in the future with, because like the example is I essentially failed my essential question because this is not what I wanted in the end, in like my first idea. It isn't what the complete project I wanted it to look like. But I had to scale things back and I had to make adjustments to get it to come out to have a finished product. So it was more of knowing, figuring out how to get these steps and how to figure out how long these steps should be. And I did fail at some of them. I took too long in some of these processes, but it was kind of a mixed bag in that sense.
So to be fair, would you say that one of the reasons it took you so long is just because you had to go through so much trial and error. Like, I imagine there would be a lot of that, trying to build this arm for the first time.
Oh yeah, no, I kid you not, I took videos of just me modeling, which I was gonna show, but then looking at them, it's a lot of sitting and clicking on like 2 objects and extending an object like 5 millimeters and then putting it back because it doesn't look right, which I think would be incredibly boring to watch. But I had like 5.5 hours of just stuff I recorded of just modeling. It was a lot of trial. It was a lot of trial and error. It was also a lot of perfectionism, like trying to get things to look exactly the way I wanted it to look, which is hard when you don't know the program super well. And to get like, there's a lot of things that like I still don't know how to do with modeling wise. So I'm trying to work on that. But that is one of the reasons why it took such a long time, just because I didn't really know what I was doing.
And if you were to do it, like start over, you could probably do it much more efficiently, right?
Yes. I would also start out with trying not such an ambitious project, because bipeds are hard. That's a lot. Like these are a lot of this jointing is a pain. Let's see, make that rig visible. Like all of those joints, it's a pain. There's a lot of little joints that you have to make sure work, and that definitely in the future I would like to try to build a simpler model and a simpler rigging system so that I can then really get down to like texture, because it's not a textured model right now. Neither is it animated. So getting down and getting those rigs like well done, instead of just trying to like, oh shit, oh crap, I need to get this stuff done, would be definitely beneficial in the future.
Do you think that if you were to go on and do more of this, it would help to have like an anatomy class under your belt or something like that? Because I imagine those are all the joints of, in a human hand. And so did you look at like skeletons
Yes.
and that sort of thing?
Yes. It was a lot of taking, the jointing doesn't always work exactly the way like a skeletal system works, but it is helpful to understand like how your hips work, so that like your hips, like it's just about like natural movement. Like if you animate something and it's not quite right, people notice, especially if it's like human-like, because it's very uncanny valley. That was one of the really hard things to get right in the model, was not making it look weird. But like, yeah, I did do a lot of looking at skeletal structures. The way I built my concept art was actually built a skeletal structure underneath and then built on top of that to get it to proportion correctly, because it's very hard to get the proportions right.
Did Spencer like warn you about how hard it was gonna be?
Yes, he did. He was doubtful that I could get it done, which he kind of was right in, where I was definitely bit off a lot more than I could chew.
Did he like suggest like something easier to try, or?
No, not really. He was like, you go for it, but I would assume that he knew that I wasn't going to complete the process, or at least only get part of the process done, like with the model and stuff, because the model that I wanted to build is really, really complicated.
So now when you see animation like this, what are you going to be thinking?
Well, it's gonna be like, oh, look how well that's animated, or I haven't been able to do that, or like it depends. Like I got to, it's actually nice because there's a lot of, Maya's pretty heavily used in the industry. It's a pretty much industry standard. So like a lot of movies use Maya, which is nice because I can look at it and go, oh, I know how that's kind of set up, or I know at least like, and looking at that, and then I can like go and look at online, look at the rigs they have, and like get to play around with them a little bit, because they sometimes release them, or sometimes it's just like student models and student rigs. You get to see how other people rig, because everybody rigs a little bit differently. Everybody models a little bit differently. So it's a very like unique to you process. So because it's art, so everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. But like it's interesting to see how other people do it, so that like you can kind of like, oh, that works or that doesn't work, and try to improve your skill set.
Anybody else have any more questions? All right, well, thank you. If everybody could step outside.
Oh, I need some